Hello and welcome to Significant Voices. I'm Wanda Miller and I'll be your host today. And our special guest is Pete Dorough. On December 27th of 2009, Pete experienced every father's nightmare. His son, Stephen, was murdered in Verbena, Alabama, just days after the family had celebrated Christmas. I met Pete recently when he prepared for a new step in the criminal justice system. After 16 years, he would ask that Stephen's murderers remain behind bars. Pete spoke that day eloquently about his son and all he and his family had lost. Pete will talk today, frankly, to us about that loss and a tragedy that has no explanation. He will share his personal journey of healing and hope and his continued fight for justice so that the true effects of violent crime can finally be heard. Pete, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you having me here today. Like you said, my name is Pete Dorough. I'm Stephen Durough's father. This has been a 15-year journey. To say that there's any way to actually navigate this, there's no instruction manual. There's no, people just don't come to you and say, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." This. It's just it's an everyday struggle. Because nobody's ready to have a child murdered.
No.
Nobody.
Pete, a lot of people, we talk to a lot of crime victims, and that's prevalent in our conversations that people say, 1 second your life is this way.
Yes.
And the next second your life is changed and there's no time to prepare for it. So
absolutely,
you're just pushed into the abyss basically, and you're really kind of struggling to make your way. So I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. So talk us through your journey through this.
Well, basically the timeline of me finding out all about this. I work for the railroad, and I had been called out on a midnight coal train going to Mobile, and I had gone down, went to the hotel, went to bed. Just a couple hours after I'd went to sleep, my phone just blowed up, like just ringing over and over and over again. And so I got up, and I'm half asleep. So when I did answer it, I think it was like 7th or 8th time that it rang. All I could get was hysteria. The scream. I'll never forget the scream, because all she could say was that he's dead. I'm like, who? What are you talking about? What's going on? And she said they shot him, and that was it. So I'm 3 hours from home. The chief deputy got on the phone, and he tells me that after an exhaustive investigation, that they believe with almost certainty that my son had been killed early that morning. It's been 15 years. It don't get better. And if anybody ever tells you it's going to get better, it don't get better. You just learn how to start dealing with it.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of things kind of fortunate happen. My boss lived in Mobile, and when I called him, he said, "Meet me in the lobby and I'll be there in 10 minutes. He got me to Montgomery in about 2 hours from Mobile. And, that's when the nightmare became even more real. Because the unknown really starts kicking in. You get eat up with all these questions, because your mind is the most amazing place that you could ever fall into, but it's the most darkest, deepest hole you could ever fall in also. And it'll eat you alive. And that was all my questions, that they got to be wrong. Not Stephen, he's a good kid. He's he's already been to boot camp. This kid knows how to take care of himself. He's a good kid. He'd give anybody the shirt off his back. And so I got home, and I don't think I slept for 2 or 3 days, just because my mind would not settle down. So apparently Stephen had gone to a party of a kid that he was very close with. And as they start telling me more and more details of that, that's when more and more of the story came out of what all led up to this. And Stephen had been shot in the back of the head with a shotgun, and his body had been placed on a burn pile because they were going to hide the evidence, hide his body, destroy it, and hide it. And they found his wallet hidden underneath a dresser drawer inside the house. So the more we talked, and over the next several days, the more I learned that this had been going on for months, that everything that led up to this had been going on for a long time.
So you went from, you're at your job, and you're going through a normal day, and you get that phone call that changed your life forever.
Yeah.
When we talk to people who've gotten that phone call, it's like they almost start moving in slow motion. And I think you're trying to kind of absorb what's happening, because it feels surreal, because you hoping that you wake up, and it's all been a bad dream, because what you find yourself in too at that point. Most people say, I've never dealt with the police. Had a couple of speeding tickets maybe, but so you're thrown into this whole new area that you don't really know anything about. You're dependent on a lot of other people to help you navigate. And while you're doing that, you're also dealing with your loss, or what you're numb, I would guess at that point. You're just going through the motions.
Well, like I said, your mind can eat your life. And just the Google is not your friend, because you're running through every scenario through your mind, and you're going to look it up on the internet, and it's going to tell you all 50 million different kind of stories, and that just adds to all the anxiety going on with it. I'm having to not only try to process that, I'm also trying to be there for my 3 boys, my wife at the time, my family, my mom and dad, his other grandparents, all the friends and family. I mean, he's a senior in high school. Wow. So, I mean, at that moment, I became a dad to hundreds of kids, because they're all looking at me.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to handle this either.
Yeah.
I'm not just the victim. And, when people say, oh, well, it just affects just a small amount. No, not in his life. I mean, it's one of those things that you're trying to not only save yourself, but you're trying to save as many others that are around you, because you're in the middle of you're in the middle of the Titanic, and it's sinking, and you're just trying to tread water yourself, but yet you're trying to save everybody else around you.
So you went into kind of a comfort mode. You're trying to fix everybody else.
Yeah.
You think that you were doing that because you really couldn't deal with what you were facing at that point?
I don't think anybody can deal with that. No. We've previously talked about, homicide, and the numbers. Homicide doesn't mean anything to most people. It's a TV show. It's something that happens on a TV show. And everybody's looking for the 60-minute ending to it with the commercial interruptions to let you go take a break and bathroom and everything else. And guess what? There's no commercials in this, and it ain't 60 minutes.
No.
So, I mean, I'm just trying to put all this together, and it's like the more you try to answer questions, the more questions come up.
Yeah.
And, one of the biggest things that I don't know if it was really the biggest impact I could make on the other kids or to get them to think in another way. Was, I probably had 6 or 8 teenagers at my house at that time, and they were all saying, what do we do?
Yeah.
How do we handle this? And it may be a character flaw, but there's times that I use humor in very strange ways to handle stress. Stephen, as a teenager, had dyed his head blue um, several times as a teenager. And my thought process, hey, if that's the worst he could do,
Yeah.
he's the one that's got to deal with his peers and everybody else looking at him. And so I insert my foot in my mouth and say, well, if we all showed up at his funeral with blue hair, he would just, he would be laughing. And the kids loved it.
Oh,
They jumped all over it. When I say there was a lot of blue hair,
wow.
there was a lot of blue hair. And, it over time, I kind of took that as a sign that,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not today, today you're liable to see peacocks walking down the road, and that's their way of their expressing themselves. But I mean, this is 2009, 2010. Colored hair was not the norm, and so of course these kids look at me and they're like, "Hey, well, I had a whole lot more hair then. You gonna have blue hair? Well, I had blue hair." And that was how I coped with it. Because there's just, I mean, how do you? You don't.
But you help those kids cope with it too,
Right.
by showing that solidarity and showing doing something for Stephen that like you said would make him laugh, and probably got them through a pretty bad day, just pointing fingers at each other and laughing at blue hair. But I think in the work we do in advocacy work, we spend a lot of our time trying to explain to people who've never experienced what you've experienced, how that feels and what that means and how that affects your life, and what crime's really all about.
Right.
The effects, the lasting effects. And like you said, it's not a made for TV movie. It's not a 30-minute detective show where the case is solved.
Yeah.
They go to trial, the bad guy goes away forever, and everybody goes away happy.
Right.
It's not like that.
No, absolutely not.
It's messy and it's dirty and it's hurtful, and it's all of those things that nobody really understands until they're faced with that moment that you had. And so and I think to us that's and that's why this doing this is so important, to be able to tell stories about real people.
Yeah.
Stephen was a real person. He had a life. He had dreams. He wanted to be something. He had a family. He had friends. He had a future. What would he have been? His life was cut short and all that ended.
Yeah.
And so, it's and you preserve that and carry on and keep his memory alive. But that's unfortunate. That's what you have, and you don't, and people can't really understand that until it happens.
Well, I've kind of made a game over the years out of it, and it's the more this has gone on, the more especially with social media. It was just coming out then. Facebook had only been around about a year, maybe a year and a half, and other social medias hadn't even come up yet. So I mean, all these different ways of communicating where we're not really communicating. We're just kind of just getting lost in the shuffle of everything. And I kind of adopted the whole blue mantra of it, because every time I did it, I not only did it then just to kind of, I guess in a lot of ways, to mask the pain. And I would do it. I would put blue in around his birthday and then around his anniversary of his murder. But every time I did it, there were kids that would say, I like that. Or I would have adults who would say, I like that, or they would say, they would make fun of it, or they would say, and every time was an opportunity for me to tell his story.
Yeah.
So whenever I was able to tell his story, that over the years, I found that the more I tell his story, the more I heal.
Yeah.
I've been to so many types of therapists and all the different, in the mental health field. And, there is no fix. There is no magic pill for any of this. This is all about, you have to learn how to deal with it. And me, I found the greatest satisfaction is if I can save one life by telling what happened to him and what his friend did to him. And because I see this, I hear his story repeated over and over and over and over again, almost on the daily, of kids that are killed by people they consider friends.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the statistics are, but I've heard it before that you're more likely to be killed by somebody that you know versus somebody that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
That is scary to me.
Well, and you think about the times that we grew up in.
Yes.
And I grew up in a small town, and we left home in the morning on a horse, bareback, trotting down the road, and we came back late evening.
Yep.
And all of our neighbors knew, they would spot us. They knew where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody looked out after each other. We didn't worry about those kind of things.
No.
We didn't worry about our friends. We were just out having a good time, not bothering anybody. But what kids are growing up, the atmosphere that kids are growing up in now is scary. I mean, you don't know the person next to you. You don't really know what that person might do. You don't know when kids start dating, or going out in groups, and they're away from home and they're away from their parents. That is frightening.
Yes.
That parents have to worry about that sort of thing now. And like you said, we read about it every day. We hear it all over the United States, all over the world, where kids are walking out the door and never coming back.
Well, and I don't want to get into the whole cliche thing, because sadly, in my perspective, I see the movement that started years ago of parents that want to be more of a friend than they do a parent. And I get you want to protect your children. You want to be there 100% for your kids. You do.
Yeah.
You want to, you want to make sure that they have the best of everything, that they have the best education, that they excel in everything, and all these good things, good positive things. But we started losing sight of the bad things that do happen in life. Kids need to ride that bicycle and fall off and scrape their knee. Yeah. Or hit their head.
Yeah.
Because then they learn consequences for actions.
Yeah.
And that there's always going to be times that things don't go just how they're planned.
Yeah.
It's life. And we have lost that in communication over the years, that now if you say something to a kid, you're going to have parents coming after you because not my little angel. And how many little angels nowadays are in prison?
Yeah.
Because mom and dad wouldn't do what they needed to do. And I'm not saying, abuse is abuse, 100%. And abuse is wrong. But there are ways that you can teach kids lessons that they need to be taught, where they don't escalate. And they keep escalating and they keep it, because you can only make excuses for one, for so long. Yeah. And I've seen a bumper sticker before, or seen the saying before that, raise your kids right. That way a corrections officer doesn't have to do it for you.
Right. Right.
And sadly, that's the world that we're living in now. And I've seen so many kids that are in my son's generation. It's like almost like a badge of honor. Well, I know what it's like to be in jail. Yeah. That is not a badge of honor.
Right.
But why have we made it such a glorious thing?
Yeah.
You know, and because they don't know consequences.
I can remember consequences from a neighbor lady down the street several times that whipped me like I was her own,
Mm-hmm.
and I deserved it.
Mm-hmm. And then she called home, and
She
you got it
called me.
again.
I got home, and there was a switch waiting
Yep.
on the couch for me
Right.
when I got home. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a different time that we live in, but that doesn't make it right.
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
there are consequences. There are, and I think that, I was telling somebody the other day, about consequences, and I go, you can simplify consequences down to, I know that if I eat the brownie, I'm going to get fat. I know that if I drive 80 miles an hour through the neighborhood, I'm going to get a ticket. I know that if I don't pay my taxes, I'm going to get in trouble. I mean, there's consequences to everything that we do every day in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's consequences that we do. We go through the motion so often we don't even realize that we're following the rules.
Right.
We follow the rules, and so when you talk to people about consequences for actions such as the individuals that did this to Stephen, and you go, are there consequences are there enough consequences? Because, you can't, there's no punishment that's going to cover that.
There's no, how do you equal taking somebody's life for anything else?
Right.
What is the value of one human life? It's I've heard it explained before, the what ifs, as you alluded to a while ago. What could Stephen have been in the future? Could he have prevented a mass casualty event? Could he have invented something that would have changed the world? Could he have done? You never know, because his life is over.
Right.
But they're still here and they're still breathing.
Right.
Is it fair? Absolutely not.
No.
But I had to come to that realization, and I had to come to that fact that nothing would ever bring Stephen back. Nothing. No. Absolutely nothing.
We met because the two individuals that took Stephen's life went to prison, and then you were notified about a parole hearing.
Yes.
And that's how I found out about your case and started doing some research and reached out to you, and we started talking, and then eventually we went to the hearing and you spoke. And I tell people, whenever I lose my way in the work that I do and in advocacy, and you talk to so many people and you hear so many stories, and you do it every day, and then you kind of veer off, and you need to be energized again. I tell people, when I get to that point, I go sit at the parole board all day. Mm-hmm. I go there first thing in the morning, 7:30, whenever all the victims have driven through the night to get there, and they're coming, and they're going to come and tell their story. And you sit there and you hear, whether it's 10 years, and I believe in your case it was 16 years, 15 years. You hear people get up and talk about their children or their wife or their husband or whatever's happened to them, whether it's a homicide or a sexual assault or whatever it is that's impacted their life. And I sit and hear the pain that whether it's 10 years or 30 years, at that moment, you're right back in that moment. And so it's really a true expression of what violent crime does to people. The collateral damage, what's left there after it's all over with, is these people that pain and that loss is still so real. And it's true testament that what was taken or what was changed can never be fixed.
I like to equate it to, they say that everything heals. Everything heals. You'll be okay one day. Everything heals. That's equating you get a splinter in your finger, and you've got that splinter in there and it hurts and it aggravates and it's everything under the sun, and you get the splinter out, and a week later you can't even tell there was a splinter there.
Yeah.
But if you had open heart surgery, they cut your chest open, they break your bone, they do all these things to go in, and that scar is there forever to your last breath.
Yeah.
So it's like saying that little spot on your finger is just equates to that same scar that you had after surgery. And it's not the same, and it never will be the same. I don't care what anybody says. It's like somebody trying to say that, well, I lost one of my pets, so I know what it's like to lose a child. Really?
Yeah.
Really? Or and everybody loses somebody.
Yeah.
Everybody loses somebody. You will experience life ending at some point in time for everybody in your life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think you kind of prepare yourself for that as you see your parents get older and older and older. My dad died 2 years ago. Went to sleep, just didn't wake up. And I want to say that my mom had died 2 years prior to that. And I truly want to say my dad died of a broken heart. She came to him in a dream and said, let's go. And he got up and he left.
Wow.
And that's exactly how I would love to leave this world.
Yeah.
But, it's not always like that. I mean, he was 79 years old, fixing to be 80. So, I mean, he lived a great life. Yeah. So you prepare yourself for that. But to get a phone call waking you up to tell you that your child has just been murdered, and then you find out the heinousness as it goes along of how it was planned and what it was about and what they did to his body and all these things. And then it comes time for the funeral. You can't even see his body.
Yeah.
Because you're burying a bag.
Yeah.
That's all that's left.
The other thing that in these years of working with people, and my dad died last year, and he was 90 and had lived a full life, and he lived with me and my husband the last 6 years of his life, and we got to spend so much time with him. And so I had prepared myself for that day, as hard as it was going to be, to see that empty chair and not do the things, not watch NASCAR on Sunday anymore, and cook a good lunch and spend the afternoon together. So there's all those things, but you do prepare yourself, and you do pick up and still have those memories, and you move on, because it's almost like a progression of life.
Right.
It is inevitable. The thing about murder is that human element.
Yeah.
It's not a natural death.
No.
It's not an accident. It's not a disease.
Yeah.
It's an intentional, conscious decision.
Yes.
By another human being to take somebody's life.
Yeah.
Or to kidnap somebody or rape somebody or any of the.
It is a true intentional act.
It's true. It's that human. It's that another person made that decision, and I think that's what makes violent crime so different than anything else, is that you do have that factor.
Yeah.
And you have to reconcile yourself around just like the things that you just said about Stephen and having a funeral where you couldn't have an open casket, and in your mind you've got to picture all of this, and you've got to wonder, how could somebody do this? I mean, how could somebody do this? How do you plan?
It's pure evil.
Right. So that part of it, and I think for crime victims, that part of it is, a huge factor, because you've got, not only are you dealing with what this person did, then you're going to be dealing with how the system's going to look at that person.
100%.
And a lot of people don't put as much stock in that as they should.
Yeah.
Where, you're dealing with Pete's dealing with Stephen being gone. Pete's dealing with Stephen being, how was taken out of this world. And then you get into the criminal justice system, and it's like you're in the rapids, and you don't have an oar, and the boat's just going and you can't stop it.
I think it's worse than that. I think it's like somebody throwed you in a big washing machine and just slammed the door, and you're in there till the cycle's over with.
Exactly. And you're just gasping for breath, trying to maneuver this whole thing. And then you've got a system that you've got to reconcile now. You've got to reconcile the fact that the individuals that did this are going to be taken into account. Their future is going to be taken into account because they have a future.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are nobody sees this. Nobody understands that, and I'm glad, because I don't want anybody to ever have to go through this kind of ordeal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fact that you're going through it. I guess that part of it is always really kind of intrigued me and there's no answers to it. There's no answers.
Well, it's when you're talking about the justice system and the courts and dealing with all that, especially if you've never had to deal with it before.
Yeah.
The first day that the boys were being arraigned, I was put where God wanted me to be put that day, because the courtroom was packed. It was in Chilton County. And when I say it was packed, it was standing room only. Mm-hmm. There was probably 150 people in there, maybe more, maybe 100, maybe 200. I don't know. But, one thing is, every time that anything is introduced to the court, they call the case number first, not the person's name. Everything boils down to your number.
Yeah. And
that becomes inhumane to a certain point, because my son's not Stephen Dorough. My son is case filed because that's how it's going to go into the system. But I was placed in a spot where I'm a very deep thinker, and I analyze, and a lot of times I overanalyze situations. And especially this day, when people say that you can get mad, that's a true statement. But people that say that they've been mad have never felt rage. And rage is an emotion that can make you do things that you would never think possible.
Yeah.
It's that mom flipping that car over to get that kid out from underneath it. But I thank God for the logistical side that I have in my brain, because he put me 7 rows back with 7 people on one side of me and 7 on the other. Because when they walked in that courtroom, I analyzed every way I could get to them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't work out. And it wasn't worth it. But when people say, I've got so much stress on me, you don't know stress.
Yeah.
You don't know stress. Thank God for the good things in your life. The bad things are just, they're going to be what they're going to be.
Yeah.
But being baptized in the justice system the way I was, it's truly an eye-opening experience that I will share to my last breath.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about what you've been doing. I know you and I have talked about some things, some of the programs that we do here at Vocal, and we have support groups, and we, try to do work with people after the fact, and try to give them, there's something to be said about coming together with people with like experiences.
Yes.
People in a room that you don't have to explain yourself to,
right?
That already know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and, your sick humor or your inappropriate laughter or your whatever it is, you're dealing with it, you're coping with it.
Yes.
And so they've, these people all come together. And one of the things that we talked about that I've seen in some of our support groups is factoring in the fathers, the men, the husbands, the boyfriends, the brothers, the uncles, grandfathers, all the men who have dealt with the horror that you've dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And, we look to men in our lives as our strength and our protector and our, the people that take care of everything, and, the ones that fix the flats and change the oil and make the cars run and keep the roof from leaking and taking care of everything kind of people. But what I've seen and what we've kind of touched on is how hard a situation for a father when you're dealing with, and you've already said, you already talked about how you were kind of taking care of everybody else because that's your nature. That's what you do. And, but to talk to us a little bit about what your mission has been to try to help reach out and help not only young men that are coming up, but people like yourself who've experienced something like you have.
One of the things that kind of hit me right after all this happened was just number one. I mean, how do you write an instruction manual on how to survive such a traumatic situation? And there ain't nothing out there. I mean, you have so-called experts that know all these things, and they like to throw facts out there. But as I tell a lot of people, I don't fit the norm. I mean, you can kind of look at me and tell.
It's the blue beard.
Yeah, it's kind of the blue. Yeah. But you're either going to learn two things about me. You're either going to judge me by looking at me, and you're going to say, yeah, okay, he's just weird. Or you're going to say, I like your beard. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Yeah. And that's when I get the opportunity. Because at some point in time, that person that judged me and said, he's weird, whatever, he's going to hear my story. I pray. He's going to hear my story, and he's going to realize I judged that man on his appearance and his appearance, not knowing his story.
Right.
Now that I know his story, it makes a difference.
Sure.
So sure. I win or I win. Mm-hmm. But one of the biggest things that in the very beginning with all of my on this journey was I knew I had to have help. Yeah. I knew I needed to be able to express myself, to be able to get this out. Because if I didn't, in my mind, I already know that it's going to end bad. Yeah. I can't handle things. We train our men, our service members to go overseas and to do things that the mind struggles with severely to process. And we average 22 of them committing suicide a day. Yeah. That tells you everything in a nutshell you need to know. Yeah. When you go through hard things in life, severe hard things in life, as a man, it's hard to figure it all out. And sometimes the easiest answer is the exit. Yeah. Because we can't handle it. But so I started going to therapy, and the first therapist was a family therapist. And the first thing he said was over 90% of people that lose a child get a divorce. And that became a very huge issue right away. And because those numbers were latched onto. And, it is what it is. It is what it is. You either can work through certain things in life, or you come to a point where you say, I can't do this anymore. And you got to part ways. And, it is what it is. Yeah. Me and me alone will have to pay for my sins one day, and I will answer for everything I've done in my life. And I have no issue whatsoever owning that. But the more that I started going to certain therapists, the more I started seeing that I know more about what's going on in my head than they do. Yeah. All they want to do is, well, let's try this pill or this pill or this pill. Yeah. And that did not work for me. What worked for me was being able to talk and get it out and let go of those things. So I joined the Compassionate Friends Network. It's a huge grief organization throughout the United States, and they have a homicide group. So, that was, to me, was like, wow, okay. I joined another group, Parents of Murdered Children. And, it's just like, okay, these people get me. Yeah. These people understand what I'm going through. But the more I immerse myself into all this, the more I'm looking around and I'm like, why am I the only guy in here?
Yeah.
Or why am I, one of the only guys in here? On average, there would be some of the groups I would be in would be 2,000 in the Compassionate Friends. Yeah. That's a lot of people going through the same thing I am. But the average, I was maybe one of five. Yeah. 5 men that actually would get on there, not much less talk. And as y'all can already see, I'm a talker. Yeah. But I've realized the more I talk, the more I heal. But the more I heal, the more I realize that there's a whole lot more people out there hurting that won't heal, that can't heal. Yeah. And you can only put so much heat and so much pressure inside of a pressure cooker before it's got to release. Yeah. And if it don't, it's going to explode. And on this journey, I've joined some men grief groups that are just men. And the pain that I hear come out of so many of these men, some of these men I've gotten close with, and they're no longer with us. Yeah. Yeah. And that kills me. Yeah. Because there's no reason that they couldn't live with the pain of losing their kids. Mm-hmm. And I get it. I do. And as I've had conversations with other guys, it's, the more you celebrate their memories and the more you celebrate those 2 kids that murdered my son, they took his body, but they'll never take his memories. Exactly. I have very few pictures of Stephen. For whatever reason, it is what it is. I have all of his memories in my mind, and those will forever be with me. Yeah. And, a kid that, he has mind made up, he was going to be an FBI agent. And so he was trying to figure out what path am I going to be able to get there. And he took one of the college entrance exam and didn't do good on it. So in his mind, he made it up. I can go to the early entry program in the Army between my junior and senior year. I'll go to boot camp. Then I'll go ahead and make rank. And because he went in, he started as an E1. By the time he got out of boot camp, he was an E3. And he was so proud of himself. And he knew that with military service, and if he kept busting his butt, that he would be able to become an FBI agent. Yeah. That's what he wanted. That was his dream. Yeah. But, to me, I equate that to he wanted to help people. Yeah. And if I can live his dream out for him, then he won. Yeah. And that's the one thing that I guess I had to move on. And the one thing that I guess was the hardest thing to do was the day that they were sentenced, I forgave them both. Yeah. I didn't forgive them for them. I didn't settle on the plea agreement for them. I did it for me. Yeah. And, I've had family members that, that was selfish of you to do. You should have fought. You should have this. You should have that. You're not living in my shoes. You're not living in my head. Yeah. You are standing on the sideline as a part-time cheerleader, showing up whenever it's convenient for you. Yeah. And no. Yeah. If you want to stand right here in the ditches with me, if you want to stand hand in hand, side by side, and fight this fight with me, cool. Yeah. But whenever we show up for court, that's when everybody else shows up. But whenever I see you in Walmart, you hightail it the other way. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things in grief that I really tell so many people is when you go through a traumatic situation, when those casseroles are gone, that's whenever the darkness moves in. Yeah. And I tell people they really don't need anything the first 10 days. They need you after that first 10 days. They need you just to say, hey, if you need to talk, talk. You ain't got to listen to them. They don't care. They don't care if you're listening to them. Yeah. Honestly, they don't. They just want somebody to physically be there for them to just unload on. And that's it, because once it's out, they're good for a while. Yeah. And then it's going to start all over again. Yeah. But it's going to be that way forever.
Well, yeah. And I do hope that what we'll be able to do is work together, and I'm going to put up some information at the end of this podcast so that if there are any men out there that are looking at this, that they'll have a place to call. And I see in our support groups, and we have a lot of mothers that come.
Yeah.
And I think probably, women are a little more social. They tend to talk more.
Yeah.
They tend to let their feelings out a little bit more. So it works for them. But we've had several men that have come to the support group for homicide families. And, they'll come one time and look around and go, well, just like you said, not sure that this is going to help me, although, and we've looked for a way to fill that gap for people. Yeah. And that's why when I met you, I thought, it's just a God thing, because, this man's been brought into my life to fill that gap for these people that, I've shared with you a story about my family members that lost someone to a homicide. And so I've seen that side of it, from not just working with people in a professional capacity or an advocacy capacity, but being pretty close. Yeah. And seeing, a lot of things that I wish I could fix or help or show a better way to do it. So I hope we get to do that, because, I believe that being together with people who've had experiences that you have had, and being able to pull those resources and come together and help each other is, I've seen it for decades, over thousands of people who've I know have healed through others. I know they've healed because they have a purpose to get up and every day, and I found myself that helping other people helped me heal.
100%.
And it was, and I've told people before, I reached a point where, and I'm not going to talk about my situation today. It's for another podcast, but I reached a point where I knew I could go left or right. Mm-hmm. And that people were going to say, if I went left and I sat in the corner and sucked my thumb for the rest of my life and never moved out of the dark room, people would say, bless her heart. You know what happened to her?
100%.
But if I took the right turn and I said, I'm going to take this path because they've taken all of me they're going to take. And today it starts with that step and with me healing. And the healing, forgiveness and healing is very personal. And I think every crime victim I've dealt with, it's been happened at a different time. Some people, like you said, during the whole trial process and at sentencing or whatever point you're at, you reach that point where you feel like you have to heal. You have to forgive to be able to move on, because in between the incident and the healing is the anger. And it's hard to move on when you're angry and you're holding that anger all inside of you, and you're trying to figure out what to do with it.
I agree.
And a lot of things that you do with it is destructive. Yeah. Like it's drinking, it's taking medication, it's acting irresponsibly, it's doing things that are out of your nature or character. But it's the way it's the way you're processing it. You're trying to get through it.
It's all a cry for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. It's all a cry for help.
Yeah. And people say some people never forgive. And that's okay, because it's their decision.
It is 100%.
Some people have to forgive, and some people, turn to their faith, or they turn to their family, or they turn to something that helps them gets over that hump. Right. And I know that forgiveness is like a freedom.
Yes.
It really is. Once you truly say, you no longer have control over me.
Yep.
And that's what that anger is. It's just a control over you. you no longer are going to guide my day,
Yes.
then you can start making your own decisions.
Yeah.
You take back the control of your life, and that's what violent crime does. It takes
Yes.
away our control, because you had no control over that day that you got that phone call.
100%. Yes.
The only control that you had, you know, your life was, you were steering your ship, you were going to work, you were supporting your family, you were doing what you do, you were driving the train.
Yeah.
Really driving the train.
Yeah.
And somebody else took control of the wheel.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's a horrible feeling, to know that you can't even plan a vacation because you know that there might be a court hearing,
Mhm.
or you can't decide to move without thinking of all the different agencies you've got to let know your address so you
Yep.
don't miss a notification
Yep.
of something. Or so it's always, you know, it's always up here, where you have to deal with it in some shape, form, or fashion. So there's that control, and that is, and you know, in our discussions, we, you know, we kind of touched on that, about how liberating that is to get to that point. Does not mean you forget.
No,
We
absolutely
never
not.
forget.
No.
We never get back what was taken.
No, you can't.
But we have to reach a point where we can outwardly move forward.
Yeah.
Internally, we're always going to deal with it. Just like you talking about Stephen.
Yeah.
And how emotional you get 16 years later.
I always preface every time that I talk to people about this, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I am. I'm going to cry. I'll get through it. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know, but I shared with you a story that kind of just like, when you know you're on the right path, when you know that you're doing what you're supposed to do, and I don't care what people call it. But I shared with you the story about Michael, the guy I met in Mobile. And you know, I truly believe it was divine intervention. 2018, I had reached out to the district attorney who tried my case, and he had provided me, or he was going to provide me with Stephen's case files, because if I'm going to talk about this, I want to be able to say every single little detail that I can, because today's kids, if you lie to them, in any shape, form, or fashion, you lost them. So I don't care if it's negative, positive, what it was. I want to know every single detail about my son's case. So he told me he was going to get them for me. And I've been working with the same guy over and over again. And this day, it just so happened when he emailed me and told me, hey, the files are there. You can come see them starting next week. Great. So I got called to work. So we stay in a hotel in Mobile. So get downstairs, talking to my coworker. I'm excited, and he's excited for me. And the hotel manager says the maintenance man's going to take y'all to work. Okay. So I get in the van, and me and my engineer are talking, and we're just, going on about, me being able to get his files. And the driver looks at me and says, you lost a son too? And, again, it goes back to men and grief. I try to tiptoe around it, because, I just, number one, he's driving me. I don't want him to freak out and, wreck, but, but it's just the general nature of, I know what it's like. And so I said, yeah, I lost a son also. And he looks at me and he said, me too. And he says, oh, okay. And, kind of a little more small talk. He said, yeah. He said, I said, my son was murdered. And he looked at me and he said, mine too. And a little more small talk. And now I'm like really nervous, because I don't know, I know this is a very touchy subject. I know this is, hard for him to tell a complete stranger. I mean, we just met 10 minutes ago. And then he looks at me and he says, yeah, he said, my son was murdered December 27th, 2009. The exact same day my son was murdered.
Wow.
2 different parts of Alabama, two completely different guys. And in that moment, we were the same person.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's a black guy, I'm a white guy. So from that moment on, we were brothers.
Yeah.
You know, connected in a way that nobody else could really know unless they've been through that.
Mm-hmm.
And right before COVID hit, I'd run into him again at the hotel, and he pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey," he said, "you know, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. Um, but he said, I just don't know how you can do it. I don't know how you got the strength to do it." He said, "But you keeping your son alive keeps my son alive."
Yeah.
He said, "And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I know I can't do it, but you can keep doing it and keep doing it. Keep keeping our kids alive. Keep telling the story." And you know, that was the odds of me meeting that man on that day, odds astronomical. I had a better luck winning the Powerball.
Yeah.
And just to meet somebody out of the blue, that wasn't out of the blue. That was confirmation that what you're doing, and that's not the only thing that I've had happen like that,
Yeah.
but that's the most profound of all
Yeah.
of it. And things don't happen in life by chance.
No.
You know, we're given free will to do what we want, but we're not given a free pass for the consequences of those actions.
Yeah.
So we all meet. Things that are destined to be have a way of working themselves out. You know, vocal was a part of my case, my son's case originally.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady that worked on my son's case was amazing. She was a spitfire. She came with knowledge, and she wouldn't back down for nothing.
Right.
And at the same time, she was fighting cancer.
Yeah, she
You
was.
know, and it broke my heart whenever the case was over with. She passed away.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe I should have stayed in touch with vocal. Maybe I should have been more involved. Who knows? But things do come around. They come full circle.
They do.
And you can fight it as much as you want. But, you know, sometimes you just got to accept things. You know, sometimes the path that's put before you is not what you want to do.
Right.
But sometimes the peace in your mind is worth the journey.
Exactly.
And if it's just one seed that I plant every day, then to me it's worth it. Because the only way we're going to make a difference, the only way we're going to make a difference in this life that we live is if we stand up and we say what we got to say and be vocal.
Yeah.
Because if not, the bad guys, who screams the loudest nowadays? Usually the people that are the wrongest.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, the people that are all these experts that talk about all these things that they know all about. And whenever you ask them, people love to talk about cops and murders and all these things because they watched so many TV shows. And I usually set them up real easy, and they come at me real hard on social media. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And then when I lay out all the facts, they shrink up about that small, and they slide out from under the door under the rock that they crawled out from under.
Right.
So, you know, the only way that we're going to make a difference in this world is if we work together.
Yeah.
I am into any man that's out there watching this that has ever been through a traumatic situation. I don't care if it's military or losing a child or any type of violence. You know, you're not alone in this. I am no better than anybody else. I have cried myself to sleep. I have, you know, had very, very bad thoughts. I've been married 4 times, which I have an amazing wife now, June, that does great work with the YMCA. Shameless plug. But we're not perfect. None of us are. None of us ever will be. But the relief that I have felt in my life from being able to just talk about my son, be able to enjoy things that if you don't let it out, you can't enjoy nothing anymore. Right. Life becomes just day to day mundane. You go from A to B to B to A. You eat and you go to bed.
Yeah.
That's not what life's about. Our kids wouldn't want us to live like that. Our kids would want us to be able to move on and do something with it. And you're doing it for them.
Yeah.
And they're worth it. So,
yeah. Well, without a doubt, I would say Stephen's very, very proud of his dad. And I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and telling us about Stephen and letting us get to know him.
Yeah.
I hate that I didn't know him in person, but we are going to put up a link on at the end of the podcast with some contact information, so that if there is someone out there that would like to join us, some men especially that's looking for a place that's a place for them to do exactly the same things that you're doing. Have people around them that understand, that'll help them.
Yeah.
And where their journey counts and means something. It certainly does to us. So again, I thank you. And I certainly look forward to all of us working together because, there's a lot more of them out there than there are of us.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of victims across the state and across the country that need our help.
Yeah.
And I look forward to working with you in that endeavor.
I'm here to do anything I can. I can ramble on for hours and hours, and it's just one of those things that once you open the dam, there's no putting the plug back in it.
Yeah.
So I mean, the story just goes on, and there's another chapter and another chapter.
Yeah.
All we could do is just keep trying.
Yeah, that's right. But it's your story.
So that's it.
Okay.
It's our story because I'm not going to shut up.
All right, then. We got a deal. We're not going to shut up.
That's exactly right.
For all of those people that really want us to shut up, not happening.
You're going to see a guy 5'10" with a mohawk and a blue beard. You're going to see me at some point in time. So you might as well just accept it.
Exactly. Just embrace the blue beard.
That's it. Embrace it.
All right.
Thanks,
Pete.
Thank you.
All right. We thank you for visiting the Significant Voices podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow, and join our channel. You can also visit the Victims of Crime and Leniency webpage and social media to learn more about our mission of advocacy for crime victims that started in 1982. Your support is greatly appreciated and important to us. Visit vocalonline.org for more information. To contact us, please call 334-262-7197 or email us at voices@vocalonline.org. Thanks again, and we hope to see you again soon.